Hello, everyone. Okay, as Peter said, I am Jeremy, and I'm here today to talk to you all about MCP, or the Model Context Protocol, and how we can go from really using it at an individual level to using it safely at scale in our organizations. So, and again, Peter mentioned this, but I'm a maintainer of Toolhive. This is an open source project, so anything I mention here today is freely available. I'll be providing some links at the end of the talk so you guys can look at the project. So let's get started. So a brief overview of what we're going to talk about is, and Adam's already done a bit of this with explaining what tools are and the model context protocol is, but we'll just make sure we're all on the same page and have a foundation of knowledge. From there, we're then going to go on a journey as an individual using AI, insecurely perhaps, to securing that individual in their single player mode and enabling safe experimentation. I'm getting notes that I need this to be closer to my mouth. Can you all hear me? Thank you, Peter. And then from that single player journey, we're going to go to a multiplayer mode where it's not just an individual within the organization, but it is teams relying on MCP to get real value out of AI in a secure way. So let's get moving. So just to briefly reiterate what the Model Context Protocol is, it's a complex name, but it's a really simple concept. As Adam said, this is really just a USB device for your agent, so you can plug in more tools so that it has more capabilities. And I like to think about capabilities as having really either real-world consequences, like sending an email, or the ability to inform the agent and provide it information, so like reading an email, so that the agent can make better decisions. We're going to talk a lot about email today as just an example, but yeah, there's really no limits on what you can MCPify. We have some people here talking about Jira, Atlassian. There are Atlassian MCP servers out there that you can use to also plug in data you may have in Jira into your AI agent. So just a bit more terminology here that I'll be using. We have clients or agents that we're talking about. So this is things like ChatGPT, Anthropic, Claude Code, VS Code, things like that. And then on the right-hand side, we have servers. This is the Toolbox. This is a GitHub MCP server, a Atlassian MCP server. And these just really expose natural language tools to the agent so that we can enrich its capabilities. So for an email server, we would have capabilities like searching email, reading emails, or sending emails. And why am I telling all of you guys this? Is this just like a developer tool? No. Yes, developers are sort of at the bleeding edge of the model context protocol adoption, but it is not strictly for developers. Knowledge workers can benefit just as much as developers by plugging in MCP servers into their agents so that they can automate more and more of their work. And then an important persona to call out here as well is the platform and security teams. So they may be running their own MCP servers too, but they're really concerned with how do we operate this software once we start to depend on it? How can we make it reliable? And then also, how do we make it secure? We're all very scared of AI these days. How do we know that we're not taking on large risks in our organization by adopting MCP? So the reality here is that MCP makes AI more useful and increases the rate of adoption once as people start using it, because you can see more value. But that increasing adoption outpaces organizations' ability to govern that AI adoption, which really creates this problem that we like to call the shadow AI problem. So the problem here is that anyone a developer in your organization hears about MCP, they get excited about automating some process, and they can, just go and install that MCP server that they heard about and add it to their agent. And this can all happen outside of normal governance for how you procure software. So there's no vetting, there's no approval. And on top of it all, we're giving these MCP servers, in order to be useful, real passwords, real information about that may be sensitive in our organizations. And so it's really important that these servers that we're using to power our AI are trustworthy. And so just to help you connect with that a bit more, I'd like to run through a thought experiment. So we've all been here. We get back from maybe a week-long vacation, and the vacation doesn't really feel over until you have that sense of dread that comes from having an inbox that is, hundreds of emails deep, and you don't think you're ever going to see the end of it. But thankfully, you came to this conference and you heard about MCP and think, I know I can automate my email triage process. So you're thinking, how can I adopt an MCP server so that I can have AI start combing through my emails for me? And so the first step on our journey here is just typing in email MCP, and you're going to find a lot of results. And you just pick one that's, passes the smell test. And installing it is typically fairly easy. And then the last step is adding it to your agent of choosing. So here we have what it looks like in the Cloud desktop. You just edit some light config, and then it's plugged in, and you're ready to roll. And you're finally draining that backlog of emails faster than you thought was possible. So the thing I'd like to call out here is that, you can actually realize value here all on your own, but there's risk. And in this case, if you were using just some random email servers off the shelf, there's a real chance that you would have been using a email server that was compromised and had a data exfiltration exploit that silently BCC'd users, or silently BCC'd some nefarious actor and copy them all in all of your emails. So that is obviously not good, and we don't want that to happen. So the question is, how can we adopt AI safely, but also not inhibit the adoption or still realize the value? And so it's not really just about these cases where it's a bad actor posing as a legitimate email MCP server. It's also just normal software problems that, occasionally these MCP servers are going to have really important vulnerabilities that need to be patched. And if everyone in your organization is kind of discovering MCP on their own, then your security teams are not even going to know when they're infected or impacted by bugs or these exploits. So that's really the shadow AI problem. All this work, all this adoption of AI is happening in the dark, outside the awareness of the security teams. And so with Toolhive, we have a sort of a two-pronged approach to this single-player shadow AI experience problem. And so the first thing is we start with the Toolhive desktop app. This is meant to enable easy adoption of AI by just making it as simple as possible to install vetted MCP servers. And so we have this concept of the Toolhive registry, which is essentially a catalog where you can find approved MCP servers for your organization. So this is configurable based on your org. It's not built into the Toolhive desktop app. And so you can say, I want, folks in my org to have access to the Gmail server or to the Atlassian server, and only things that are explicitly approved are available for them to download. So this is really where we start to see security teams exerting a bit more control over which MCP servers are adopted. And so returning to our thought experiment, just to illustrate what the experience is like in the Toolhive desktop app, we first start with that problem. How do I find an MCP server? The first step is coming to the Toolhive desktop app within the registry tab. Like I said, there you can just type in whatever type of MCP server you're looking for. Then it's a single button install to get up and running. There's no command line instructions that you have to execute that seem kind of sketchy. It's easy, it's safe, it's secure. And then you actually have to plug it into your agents. So here we even make this easier in the Toolhive desktop app, that you can configure all your agents in one spot just with these simple toggles that you can choose. Oh, I don't want Claude Code to know about my email tools because there's no reason my Claude Code should be sending emails. And so within the Toolhive desktop app, you can go all the way from finding an MCP server to plugging it into your agent. Stepping back here just for a moment, the insight here is that we need to make the fast path the secure path. So all these steps that we sort of talked through, you can go through in less than a minute to get up and running. And comparing that to the experience of, that solo individual operating in the shadow AI realm, that, takes on the scale of 5 minutes to find and install and configure. So what we see here is that the fast path is the secure path, which makes individuals more likely to actually follow it. So that is the single player experience, just how we can secure that. But AI adoption doesn't stop at an individual level. We want to scale this up and actually enable it within our teams and within our organizations. And so I want to talk about the multiplayer mode and how StackLock and Toolhive help solve the problems we encounter along the way. So the first thing that happens once as we move beyond individuals adopting MCP servers is that they essentially become production systems that need to always be on, that need to be fixed when they're broken. And Toolhive comes in here by making MCP servers as easy to deploy as any other piece of software that platform teams are experienced in running. Comes out of the box with Kubernetes operators that make it easy to install. And then another way of, once you start doing this centrally running MCP servers that you can exert more control, is by having more fine-grained control over which tools of those servers are exposed. So let's say as an organizational policy, we don't want AI sending emails to our clients or to our users, which is probably a pretty reasonable thing. But we still want it to be able to read emails because there's important context there that it needs to make decisions. So with our gateway, which would sit in front of your email MCP server, you can have some light configuration that selects only the tools that you want to explicitly allow. Another problem, of course, once as we start operating at the multiplayer level, is we want secure, safe access on an individual level to control who has access to what tools and what can their agents do. So, for example, engineers may be the only ones in your organization who should have access to Jira. So within Toolhive, we can integrate with your existing IDP like Okta or Entra, and then configure which subset of the tools that are plugged into the gateway that users should be allowed to use. And so a really nice thing here that Toolhive does for you is it only exposes the tools that a user is authorized to use to the agent. So this means if you don't have access to a tool, then your agent won't attempt to call it, which is really nice because it means the agent's behavior sort of snaps itself to the capabilities that it has. And of course, with production grade software, we need to be able to support it. These platform teams need to be able to operate it. They need to be able to explain how it's being used. And so Toolhive comes out of the box with support for OpenTelemetry, allowing you to plug your entire MCP estate into the monitoring tools that you know and love today. So this makes it really easy to get up and running with MCP servers at scale without having to learn brand new tooling to operate and support this software. And last but not least, once as we start actually adopting MCP servers at scale, and everyone in our organization is using AI, we really start to become concerned with cost and reliability of the agent itself. So if you imagine you start having hundreds of tools plugged into your agent, that's going to have two effects. The first is that you're going to spend a ton of money on tokens that's going to go to OpenAI or Anthropic, because just the more information you try to give the agent, that's more money that you have to spend. There's another knock-on effect here where the more information you give an agent, the quality of its decisions will decline. And so one of the capabilities we have built into our gateway system is this MCP optimizer, which filters the tools down for the agent just to the ones that are relevant to the task. So it doesn't matter if there's a sea of tools, the agent's only going to see the 5 most relevant. And this really both improves the behavior of the agent while also reducing the cost of these AI systems. And then lastly, but not least, is this composite tools problem. So this is similar to what Adam was talking about with deterministic workflows, but at a more micro level. So when we're building these MCP platforms, we typically want tools to be called in a predictable, repeatable way. And so let's say if we want AI to be scheduling meetings for us, but we really want to enforce that it's always sending an agenda out to the attendees. And that requires, multiple MCP calls to both a calendar MCP server and a email MCP server. We could stitch those together into a composite tool that ensures both of these steps happen. And so that way your agent is always going to use that tool in order to schedule an event. And then you could hide those underlying tools that aren't necessary for the agent. And then this is really nice because the agent doesn't have to figure out actually how to redo this work every single time. So yeah, recapping what we've seen here, we've sort of shown how with Toolhive, we can sort of get from that shadow solo player experience all the way to secure MCP at scale. With the registry, you can control which MCP servers are available to users in your organization. And then once you're ready to evolve beyond that, the Toolhive platform comes built in with tools to help you scale to an organizational level. As I said, this is all open source. So if you scan this QR code, this will take you to our GitHub. You can, from there, find links to Discord, how to install the Toolhive desktop app. And I am very thankful for your attention. If you have any questions about Toolhive, MCP servers in general, please feel free to get involved on Discord, open issues on GitHub. Would love to hear about the challenges that you all have. So thank you.